In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the grading tool to create your detention pond. I'm going to put my detention pond over here, and I'm going to use this outline of this parcel to make the shape of the pond. So I'm going to offset this 10 feet to begin with, just as an arbitrary, because I like to have a room of safety. Now, I'm going to take this side, and I'm going to go ahead and move it this direction. I'm going to go ahead and connect those two and move it this direction 10 more feet because I need to grade back to slope. So I'm going to give myself 10 more feet. Now on this one, I'm going to go ahead and connect it back. Now I'm ready to start. This will be the top of my bank. So I'm going to offset 10 feet to get a 10-foot berm. And then I'm going to offset 4. That's 1 foot of depth, and I want to go 4 feet depth from the top front of berm. So that's 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot. Now I'm going to get rid of these contours, or these lines, and I'm going to make this my contour of my control. So I'm going to say fillet radius, and usually I do a 10 on small areas like this because I need as much volume of the pond as I possibly can. Now here's the thing, is this size pond, this original estimation may not be big enough. Now I'm going to have to do a 5 here. I don't recommend a 5 because it's very hard for contractors to build. So now what I've got is I've got my control, and I can put an elevation of 72. It's just a regular polyline. If I wanted, I could just take, and I'm going to move this over. I'm going to copy this over here. I could now just take this and offset it 4 feet. 2, 3, 4. 4 foot depth, 4 to 1 slopes, and then offset 10. And I can change these elevations to match what it needs to be and create a surface, and by saying that these are contours. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to just show you how to use the grading tool. So the first thing I have to do is go to the feature line and set it as a feature. So create feature from objects. So I'm going to click that and then hit enter. It's going to be used as it's going to go underneath my site. The feature name is control elevation of detention ponds. If you have more than one, you'll say which pond it is. I'm just going to use the basic style. I'm going to leave this as default and everything else. If any of these are checked, just uncheck them. Say OK, and notice that it turns to a feature line. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the grading creation tools, and I'm going to come up here and set my grading group, and it's set as site 1, so that's fine. Now, I am going to compare it to the existing surface because I need my cut fill. I can change the elevation. I'm just going to leave that as default. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to grade it to an elevation, okay? And by doing that, I can set it at a front and top of bank is 76 and a back of bank at 77. The reason I picked control at 72 is I'm assuming about 3 feet below surface is going to be where your seasonal high water table is. And that's just an estimation which would have to be obtained from a soils engineer to tell us that. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull this down and say create grading tool. And I am going to see, it says select the feature. So I've picked this feature and it says pick the side that you're going to grade to. I'm picking this side because I'm going up at a 4 to 1. Yes, I'm applying it to the entire length, and I'm going to a 76 elevation. Remember, I set the existing contour at a 75, so I'm sorry, at a 72, so it knows 76 is as high as it wants to go. So I'm going to hit yes. I'm going to do a slope, and it's going to be a 1 to 4 for the cut, and a slope of a 1 to 4 in fill. Our project is all cut. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is I am going to offset the top of bank, and it's going to be a 10 to 1. So I'm going to select this feature. Yes, I'm going to apply it, and it's going to be 77, slope 1 to 10, slope 1 to 10. And it's going to put a top of bank in here. All right. Now, with that, You can also change the, if I look at this grading here, click on that and right click. If you look at the properties, I want to, and I'm just double checking this, it should be my surface. Typically I get contours created in this. If you don't get the contours, take a look at your grading group properties, and it appears I didn't have this checked, and I want my surface of my 10 to have a 5:1 design. So I'm going to go OK, apply, and OK. And what that does is it brings the contours in, because I always show my contours of the plan. Now, the next thing is I'm going to go ahead and freeze off the red, because that we don't typically show that. Now, you can also do a grading and creation tools and get it to grade down to an elevation of 62 for the depth of our pond. So let me try that. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to, oops, no I'm not. I'm going to leave it as is for right now. In another video, I'll show you how to do the cut fill, but I want to get focused on just the storm aspect of this right now. Now, the next part, I've got my storm pond. Before I start on the stage storage, I want to make sure I completely forgot, whoops, I'm going to show you that we also have to do the infill. So when I go to creation tools, I want to go and on this object here, I want to pull it down and create an infill. So I'm going to pick the inside of that, and it says select area to infill, and there is the selection of our infill. So now I'm going to go ahead and show you how to get the surface or the volume of our pond. So I'm going to come up here, oops, I'm going to come up here to our Analyze tab, and underneath the Design parameter, I need the Stage Storage. So I click on Stage Storage, and this will be our Detention, actually it's Detention pond. And we can give it a name. I'm only going to use the average end area method for the volumes, and we are going to use the define basin from entity. So I'm going to pick the define basin, and I'm going to give it a basin name, and this will be entire, or you can say all, or you can say project. If there was multiple ponds, give it to whatever, pond 1, pond 2, and we're going to define it from the surface. So we're going to define, and we're going to come over here, and we're going to pick those polylines. Now notice what you have is you have from 72 to 76, you have end area method incremental volume. All right. Now, so we're going to look at this one right here and we're only going to look to 76, because typically we don't use the volume in the pond to the 77 because we have to have 1 foot of freeboard for the 100-year storm. So the pond, the water in the pond shouldn't get any higher than an elevation of a 76. So we're going to use these volumes in here in our storm and sanitary analysis program. All right, you can export those out or create a table. I'm going to go ahead and just save table. And I'm going to put this in my file folder underneath my projects. So detention pond stage storage. All right, and I'm going to click on save and cancel. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is doing a 3D polyline to create. Remember, I said the inlets are going to go at the intersection or along this line where the low point is when we created our profile. And remember, creating our, well, in another class we created the profile. And we're going to have low points here, and where these two come together, they're going to discharge out. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to type in 3D poly. Let me get in my command prompts. So I'm going to go 3D poly, and I'm going to have an inlet on approximately this intersection. I'll be moving these to this intersection to somewhere here, and it's going to discharge. I'm going to turn my orthos off. Discharge into this pond here. Now it's a 3D poly because what it is, you have vertexes that you can set elevations at. So on elevation or at vertex 4, I'm going to set it at, controls at 72, so I'm going to drop it 4 feet and set it at 68. No, I'm going to do it at 67, okay? And then elevation, 3 is going to be 68. Elevation 2 is 69. 69. And elevation 1 is going to be 70. The other thing is usually you start the invert of the pipe 4 or 5 feet below natural ground or proposed grade. And our proposed grade is 74 and a half. I mean, it's almost 75. So it should be okay. I may have to lower this depending on what the hydraulic grade line is. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that's actually 69. I'm going to drop it, make it 5 foot. 68, 67, and 66. Now I'm just dropping these arbitrarily at 1 foot per vertex. You don't usually do that, but it gets me a start point to explain what we're doing. So I'm going to do 3D poly again, and on this one I'm going to go from here to here to the intersection of the polyline that I created before. So when I look at this one, at vertex 3, I'm already at a 67, vertex 2 is going to be a 68, and vertex 1 is going to be a 69. All right, this gets me a start on how I want my polylines, or how I want my storm pipes to look. All right, now the next thing that I need to do is come up to the Home tab, and I am going to go, where's it at? Pipe network, sorry, pipe network. Create pipe network from object. So I'm going to pick this first one here. And it's showing the flow direction was pointing that direction. Yes, that is okay. Hit OK or hit enter. Now I'm going to do storm run 1. Its part list is going to be storm sewer. I am going to use a concrete pipe of at least 24 inches, and I am going to use a cylindrical structure of, or a conical, let me see. I'm going to use the concentric cylindrical structure, a 48-inch diameter. The surface that I'm going to pick is existing road, so it's going to tie in the top of the structure to the road 1 surface. The alignment name is road 1, so it's going to put station and offsets, and I'm going to use the vertex inverts, vertex elevations as my invert. Typically when you design the pipe to the crown, so it's more efficient crown to crown, but I find it's easier to do calculations with inverts and modify the inverts as you go because it's an iterative process. So I'm going to say okay. When it does that, it automatically puts my structures in. Now, it puts the wrong style structures in there, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the style of the structure over here. If I look at the properties of that, structure properties, I'm going to say this is S-1, and this is typical naming convention. And I'm going to change that to a type 2 structure. And the sump depth, these are the things that you'll have to change. I'm going to change the sump depth to 0, and the control is based on elevation. So it automatically uses the bottom of the invert as my sump elevation, which is also known as your invert of your pipe. Okay, so I'm going to apply and OK. Now what that does is creates this shape, and that's what our inlet's going to look like. The next thing we have to do is actually move it and I'm going to turn my snaps off, that it is in the proper location. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to move this. I'm just going to eyeball it for right now. I'm going to move it based on this line that I had drawn before. I'm just going to do nearest and set it here. I'm going to do the same thing for this one. Right click, structure properties. I'm going to change this to S-2. I'm going to change it to a type 2 because this is a sag. It's at a low point, so it's receiving water from both sides. I'm going to change that to 0, and I'm going to change that to elevation. And I'm going to apply and OK. Now, this is the only painstaking part of it. It's one of those things you just have to do. It doesn't come in exactly what you're anticipating. All right. Now, the next one is going to just be a regular manhole. So I'm going to do, it needs to be the only one selected. Select structure properties. And I'm going to do S-3, capital letters S-3. And I'm going to change that to a storm manhole. Part properties, change the sump elevation to 0 and go to elevation. There's other things that you control, but I'm going to focus on these. Apply and OK. Now the last one is going to be right click on it, structure properties. And we are going to say it is a MES-1, a mitered end section, and we're going to do a mitered end section at a 4:1. I'm gonna change the pipe size to a 36-inch pipe. Pipe properties, there's no sump, and we're going to base it on elevation, apply, and OK. Now, that means if I say that's a 36-inch pipe, and I'm just going to orientate this so it's actually into the water, like that. I'm going to change this pipe. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to swap part. That means I can change it to a 36-inch diameter pipe. Typically, we know what size pipe we're going to set most times. Now, with this, I'm not going to do this one right now. I'm just going to show you in the next video. I'm going to bring this information into the storm and sanitary analysis program. So that's it for this video. You'll have to do both of the pipe systems in class, and once we get the pipe property set, we can export out and bring it into the storm and sanitary analysis.